good evening to each and everyone. My name is Simon Chamakala. I'm the Joint Secretary of DKCC. I'm originally from Palatat, Kaipura, and right now I'm in Dallas, Texas. We are actually now going to start this great session, great youth session. And I really appreciate everyone's time, especially with the different time zone. Today's Diaspora Knanaya Youth session, we are actually going to discuss our youth challenges. Next, I would like to welcome our vibrant chairman, Mr. Jyotish Kudalil. Jyotish, please.
Honorable Mayor Rohin Elackatt, respected speakers, and my beloved Knanaya community members. As we all know, during election times, all our community leaders talk a lot about bringing the youth to the mainstream. However, what we notice today is a steady distancing of youth from our community. We are living in a world which gives utmost priority to personal freedom and is more or less controlled by the social media. Hence, it is paramount that our church and community leaders set a work style which welcomes the views of the youth and bring them to the forefront. By ensuring to keep the youth by our side, we prevent them being moved away from our community. We don't expect anything to be sorted by holding 1 or 2 meetings. But I believe if at least 50 people are there to listen to our youth today, it's good beginning for a change. This panel discussion is the outcome of 3 previous meetings by 15 youth from different parts of the world. The speakers today present the points raised in the said meetings. The speakers are expected to make their presentation in half an hour, and then we shall proceed with the discussion on the subjects presented. Now, let me move on to my duty of welcoming all our guests today. We are privileged to have Honorable Mayor of Missouri City, Mr. Rohin Elackatt, to inaugurate this program. His inauguration of this youth panel discussion is so fitting because he started his public life through KCYL, and he was the very first president of the KCYL North America. I take this opportunity to congratulate Rohin on becoming the mayor of Missouri City. He is an inspiration to the generations to come. On behalf of DKCC and those who are present today, I extend a hearty welcome to Mr. Rohin Elackatt.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to welcome all the young speakers to the panel. Vipin Chalingal, Yesudas Ragamaliga, Nikita Valiavital, and Shona Narapur. Lastly, I welcome you all who have come to listen to our youth and our younger generation. Before I conclude, I would like to thank everyone who helped, especially Dr. Shin Sagasala in organizing this program. Thank you. Simon?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jyotish. Next, I would like to welcome our Honorable Mayor, the first Knanaya Mayor in the history of the United States, Mayor Rohin Elackatt, for the inaugural letters. Please welcome.
Thank you. I hope all of you can hear me, because I'm having some hard time hearing you all.
Yeah,
you can, right?
Yeah, you.
Yeah.
All right, first of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you. I want to thank Jyotis for waking me up early in the morning to get me onto this panel. But definitely, Simon, thank you for your kind words. I've seen so many of you that I do recognize on here, especially the moderator, Sheens. He and I worked together for a long time, especially I think in California, when we had one of the KCYLNA convention. I was the director and he was the general secretary for KCCNA. So we had that opportunity to conduct that convention. And I do recall like it was yesterday. Jyotis, first of all, I want to congratulate you for hosting this event on a global level to discuss and then to talk about things that are important to youngsters. You know, some of you probably on the channel that knows, or are you aware, I just found this out on the 50th Jubilee of KCYL in USA, that it was Bishop Tareo back in 1960 that started the process for KCYL. He was the bishop that put KCYL together, especially during a time, 1960, you know, boys and girls were not supposed to be together. There was issues of that, getting everyone together. But he had a vision. The vision that he had was he wanted to unite our community, and he wanted to continue to, for us, our endogamy, you know, for boys and girls to meet each other and find common purposes, and hopefully that they will get together. So that was a goal. He didn't have 10 goals. He had like 2-3 goals. And I believe that he achieved. There's so many of us from KCYL in India that grew, went on to being so many different opportunities in life. I myself is a product of KCYL. I started KCYL in Chicago back in 1992. And then on to becoming KCYLNA president, and Vipin. I saw him here early. Vipin was one of those guys that followed me from Chicago to definitely to KCYLNA. And I know that I watched his term, and he has done a lot of wonderful things for Chicago as well as KCYLNA. And I'm sure there are so many others that are here that I can go on. But my message is simple, just like Bishop Tareo. Simple, very simple. Number one, I think as a global, we need to understand that, first of all, we need to understand and accept who we are. The generation of your generation now sometimes questions because you're open to all this avenues. You see this, whether you're in UK or Australia or America or wherever you are, you're exposed to things that the generation before you or 2 generations back were not allowed to, or they just didn't have the opportunity. So first of all, you have to understand who you are and accept that. Number 2, if you choose to, how do you sustain within a community? How do we grow KCYL, or how do we grow that youth in the future is something that one has to ask themselves. So try to come up in your own community. It doesn't matter, UK, Australia, America. Get involved, partake in those programs, and hold a position. Hold a position so this way that your efforts can be contributed, right? And number 3 is my favorite one. If you ever leave Knanaya community, don't question it. Do not come back and question Knanaya community on its existence and on its practices. Let me make that very clear. Number 3, you have your right to go, your right to choose your spouse, and not to follow the endogamy. But if you do, that is a choice you made. Do not come back and question all of us. So if we're good, those are the 3 principles that I would say, my humble suggestions to all the young of you to think about and follow through. Lastly, our community has been around since 1910, even further than that, especially with the churches in Kotem. So that's 110 years old, 110. It's all of us that's on this camera that I see has to continue this. Myself and Jyotis, I think we're right at we have the same birthday and we're at the same age. We're going to move a step aside later on, but it is you that carries a torch. You have a big responsibility. I don't think you realize because you're so young today, and you're thinking of, you have so many things going on in your life, school, want to get married, want to get a house, want to start up, just so your priorities are different. Versus my priorities and Sheen's and Jyotis and Vipin now. Vipin is not as older as me, but he's still getting there. So reality is different. But my take on this is the community rely on you. And you have to help us, help our community to move the community forward. I get the questions asked by some, why should I marry from Knanaya? What's the most important thing? It's not a big deal. This is going to go away. It's not going to go away. Understand that it will not go away. It is, that's what makes us unique. That's what makes us who we are. And I can tell you, I'll leave you with one thought. I'm a mayor of the city of Missouri City, Texas today, but I'm a Knanaya first, and then a Malayali, and then an Indian, and then a mayor of Missouri City. With that being said, wanted you to know that I'm very proud of who I am. First, you have to accept, remember I told you, accept who you are. So you have to be proud of that. Anywhere I go, anywhere I go, I understand that my role is different in different venues. But if I ever get an opportunity to attend a Knanaya function, I always let be known that I am so proud, super proud of our community. Our community comes together, they help each other. We have issues on national levels and every association levels, there's bickering, there's fighting. I mean, think about myself, I'm in a biggest fight. It's bigger than Knanaya community. There's always people criticizing you for something you do as a mayor. So it's nothing, it happens. But I want you guys to continue to grow. And if there's anything I can do, as I'm going to partake in this discussion a little bit, so if there's anything I can do to help, I will be more than happy to be there in the future. With that being said, I am officially inaugurating this event to start off Jyotis and Vipin, Sheens, and all others. And I see Simon. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. God bless you guys.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Next, I would like to invite our moderator, Mr. Chris Carlisle from Australia. Chris is the final medical student at Queensland. He has served many positions in KCYL of Australia, Oceania, Australia. I would like to welcome Chris as the moderator of today's session. Chris, please welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and in some instances, good evening to all those who have zoomed into today's discussions. As Uncle previously said, my name is Chris Carlisle, and I'm a final year medical student from Australia. I'll be your moderator today in what seems to be a landmark event for the future of our community. I'd also like to take this moment to recognise our special guest today, Mr. Robin Elackatt. Now, my grandmother is 75 years of age, and she was born and raised in Kerala and doesn't know the English language. But I remember asking her about any fond memories of her limited schooling education. She looked at me with a wry smile and recounted how in the 7th grade, there was a quiz to see who tops the class. The question that was put before them was, what is the longest river in the United States? The classroom was silent, and everyone looked around to see each other. My grandmother stood up with a smile and said, "The Missouri River." I know for a fact that it would make her proud to know that a member of our Knanaya community is now the mayor of Missouri City, which shares the same name as that iconic river. In a similar manner, we, the youth of this community, are extremely proud of your efforts, Mayor Elackatt. Thank you for gracing us with your presence today. For all those who have dialed in, firstly, I want to thank you for coming. Secondly, I want everyone to be comfortable partaking in this discussion. Feel free to speak in Malayalam or English, and I urge all of you guys to raise your opinions and make this a productive conversation. Tonight, we have 4 lovely speakers from 4 different parts of the globe. Our first speaker is Shauna Tormey. She's a 23-year-old lawyer from Melbourne who prior to COVID was a keen traveller who's traversed more than 20 countries. She'll be guiding the discussions about the demographics in our community and the key differences amongst the youth themselves. Our second speaker is Nikita Vincent. She's a 23-year-old student from Dubai doing her master's in international relations. Not only does she know Malayalam and English, she learned Urdu, Hindi, and can write Arabic. She'll be spending some time highlighting the challenges faced by the community in retaining diasporic youth. Our third speaker, Yesudas Joseph, is a 23-year-old physiotherapist from the UK who's also completing an MSc in physiotherapy. Today, he's going to be discussing the values that the next generation see within the Knanaya community. Our final speaker is Vipin Chalangal. Vipin Jatin is a lead in an embedded software team for Bosch Automotive. He's also a musician at heart. He knows how to play the violin, but he wanted me to clarify that knowing how to play violin doesn't always equate to being good at it. But I can assure you that he'll be fantastic when it comes to discussing actionable ways to engage and attract the next generation of Knanayites. Upon concluding their speeches, we'll open up discussions to the rest of the audience. These questions will be directed to the presenters themselves. A gentle reminder to state your name and where you are from before you begin your question. Furthermore, please feel free to put questions in the chat box on Zoom as well. It should be on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Before we finally move on to the speakers, I'd like to acknowledge the contributions made by Mohan Gardoril and Neil Edat from the US, Lynette Tormey from Dubai, Blaze Thomas and Julie Jaws from the UK, as well as our very own Jennifer and Dolby from Australia. So I'm going to officially hand over my duties to Shauna now, who will take over.
Thank you, Chris, for the introduction. Just want to check everyone can hear me okay?
Yes, okay.
I can hear you.
Perfect.
All right, cool. Well, without right in, since we've been given an introduction already. So the question here is, who are the next generation of Knanayites in the diaspora? And what can we do for them? What can we as a community do for them to engage them, to ensure that they remain active members of our community? And to answer this question, we first need to consider who are the next generation of Knanayites in the diaspora? The next generation of Knanayites in the diaspora are those who are either born outside of Kerala or raised in the diaspora from such a young age. This distinguishes them immensely from the previous generation of Knanayites, those who emigrated outside of Kerala in their adulthood. Now, putting aside our cultural differences, there's always a huge generational gap between one generation and the next. Now, on top of this generational gap, the next generation of Knanayites have the additional burden of trying to assimilate into a different culture with the pressure of retaining their roots. They yearn for a sense of belonging in the country in which they've settled, to be liked by their peers, to have meaningful relationships with their non-Knanaya friends, and to fit into a social circle. And they differ vastly from the current parent generation of Knanayites in the diaspora, in that most often their primary language is English, or the language that's predominantly spoken in the country in which they live. They hold Western values, and their cultural identity is often a mixed bag. I know if I were to ask my parents the question, "Where are you from?" without hesitation, they would say they're from Kerala, India. However, this is seldom the case for next generation Kanars in the diaspora. Such a question would invite uncertainty and hesitation for them. I know I certainly would look around and counter that question with, do you mean where I was born, which nationality I'm now, or where my parents are from? So the Knanaya community in the diaspora are tethered by a sense of belonging to the same community, the pride that they are Tekumbagas. This is where I believe that the next generation of Kanars, the Knanaya youth, are starkly different to the current generation. Generally speaking, and I know that there are many exceptions, but people in the West tend to be more individualist, and people from Asian countries like India, Japan, China, and the like tend to be more collectivist. Now, the difference between the two, individualist mindset is one that focuses on the rights and the personal benefits of an individual, but a collectivist mindset stresses the importance of the community and group goals. Unity and selflessness are valued traits for collectivist cultures, but independence and personal identity are stressed in an individualistic culture. Now, what does this mean for us, for a community like ours, the Knanaya community? The Knanaya community is one that is able to thrive in the diaspora because its most devoted members have a collectivist mindset. To extrapolate, our parents, the older generation of Knanayites, upon whose shoulders the Knanaya community and leadership currently sits, possess a collectivist mindset. And this ensures the preservation of the Knanaya community thus far. But for these next generation Knanayites, having been raised in Western countries, are largely individualists. For them, a sense of belonging is not enough. The next generation of young Knanayites need to know what's in it for them, personally. And this is what we need to be closely examining in order to preserve our community. Now, when we consider the value proposition for the next generation of Kanars, it's important to consider that we can't just group all next generation Knanayites as one big group with similar needs and interests. The term next generation Kanars should be seen as more of an umbrella term. They need to encompass children who are born in the country in which they're settled, aged roughly 0 to 9. Those children who are a little bit older in the age brackets of about 10 to 14. Then the younger KCYL generation, which is about 15 to 18. And then those who are in about uni or college in some countries, age about 19 to 25. And finally, those who are recently married, anywhere between like 25 and 35. Because the needs of each of these different groups vary significantly and their priorities differ. So I'll pass it on to the rest of my team to discuss the challenges that the next generation of Kanars in our community face, the value propositions that we as the Knanaya community can put forward to them, and how we can engage them. Nikita, I think that's your cue.
Cool. Thanks, Shauna. That was wonderful. So I'm not going to further introduce myself. Chris has already done that for me. So some basic points. Basically, Shauna already set up the foundation in that we understand that there are different types of categories of the youth. So I'll be talking about the challenges that come with our community and retaining diasporic youth, but I'll specifically be speaking to the experiences of people between, say, university age and a little older, maybe close to getting married, and maybe right after marriage. So moving on. So one of the first points that we have to consider is that there is the lack of a central value proposition in our community. And this comes out of two things. One thing is that as diasporic youth, we are all raised in different countries. So if Dubai, or if you're born in Australia, or if you're born in US, you still get different value systems from the society that you're embedded in. I, for example, grew up with a lot more Indian kids compared to some of my cousins who grew up in Texas, and they had other students who were American primarily in their schools. So you grow up with different values. So at this point, you will face questions like, why stay with the Knanaya community? What do I get? I have a life outside of this. I have friends outside of this. I've said that sometimes when I've argued. My brothers have said it. My friends' siblings have said it. My friends have said it. And you as parents may or may not have heard it at some point or the other. So one of the things we need to do is formulate a central set of values that anywhere across the diasporic Knanaya community, you can really talk about. And this needs to connect to your lifestyle in a way, not just events or traditions or marriages. It's also like your day-to-day life. And the next point for me would be moving on to talking about how we are a traveling generation. And this is markedly different from any other generation. Obviously, as the Knanaya community, all of us are diaspora. Our parents have been migrating since forever. Nammal Kapilakere vandana in 345 AD. This is all true. We have always been a migrating community. But this is also part of the culture of this generation. It's not about getting a better job when I go outside. I can get a good job in Dubai. I could get a good job if I went back to India. I'm not going to assume that I'll get a good job, but depending on where you're going in life, it's also about the experience of being able to travel. It's about being able to work in different countries and really get to know the place. And this is an important thing in my generation. Many of my friends who grew up in Dubai, or even friends of mine who grew up in the States, sometimes do want to leave the country and maybe go work in another country for a long time just to experience the place. So at this point, one of the fundamental things that the community needs to do is create a kind of safety net among other global youth, so that when you go ahead, you can actually speak to someone from the Kna community and kind of get that feeling that you're not walking into a place completely alienated. I was recently talking to everyone here about an incident where I first moved to Vienna, and I didn't know anyone there, but the first people who poured in were people from the Knanaya community, and I hadn't met them before. They just came and decided to pick me up from the airport when I was stranded in the middle of the city because they knew me, and they knew me through my dad, so I'd never met them before. So it's these kinds of small little things. And there's also the next point that I was moving on to, which was the idea that we need to make space for an open conversation. And this is important to many of us, and this is a problem that the community often faces. We are a traditional community. We are all about maintaining our values and taking things forward in some ways in the same way. But this also means that this generation is put in a particularly tough position. We are the first generation that's so active on social media, and people my age especially. So what happens is that you often have to not just put output, but there's also input. Our community is moving ahead with the times. We are using social media. For example, we're all using Zoom now for this meeting. Many of our KCYL or other organizations have Facebook pages, have Instagram pages, and we're posting all about things there, posting our videos, posting our lives. But what happens is you also have to then get comments from people from other communities, get comments from kids from other communities or your friends. I remember recently there was actually a meme going around that was making fun of Kna people, and it blew up pretty hugely in Kerala. And a lot of my friends from university who weren't Kna sent that meme to me, and they were like, dude, aren't you from this community? Like, why are you guys still doing all of this? And I don't have a problem with my community. I'm glad to stay here. I understand endogamy. But when you're at a slightly younger age, even a little younger than I am, it can be difficult to be able to explain these things to other people, or to be able to put forward good arguments to talk to other people about this. And for that, you need to start having these conversations at home. You don't tell them, oh, just shut down the conversation when they say, why do we need to do endogamy? Sit, have a conversation. And this needs to be done in the public sphere as well within our community. Everyone needs to kind of get together and be free to have these conversations. You may or may not choose to stay with the community, leave the community, like the Mayor Rohin said. Once you leave, don't come back and complain about it. But when you're here, you also have a responsibility to defend it, and you need to be able to articulate your words, to know what to say to defend it. So this is one important thing. And moving ahead to the next point. There's also other slightly more challenging conversations that we'll have to have. Sometimes there's not enough women in our leadership. All of our aunties are very active, they're very talented, but sometimes you don't see them as much in decision making, or they choose to stay away. Why is that? And you can say that, oh, this is the way we've always done things, but you need to have those conversations in the open for things to change. And I think as long as that doesn't happen, people won't have, and this is my main point here, people won't have a sense of community over a sense of organization. Organizations come and go. They're just systems of people. We have a president, we have a vice president, we have all these positions. That's just to get things done, to get an event, to pull people together for an event, or to just do a donation drive and those kinds of things. What you need here is more of a sense of community. And we often lose sight of that because we get so worried about who's the president, who is the vice president, who's running for this position, who ran last year, who ran for the last committee. We start forming subgroups, we start getting into fights. And what this does is it makes the politics of the community look very ugly to a generation like mine. And then we don't want to get into leadership because we're scared that the friendships that we have, the relationships that we already have with people will start falling apart. And that keeps people away from kind of formalizing institutions and community. So we need to remember that we're a community before an organization. Communities are formed on common values, on a sense of family. You should be able to kind of calm down and chill out with these people. You shouldn't feel more pressured when you're around them. So that was one of the things I was getting at, which is community politics is a learning ground, but it's not a fabric part of your life like India. Naturally, people who are part of the community are also running for elections sometimes, are part of church, are part of the way you do shopping even. It isn't the same for diasporic youth. We also have many other social circles that we are a part of. So unless you're really comfortable with the Knanaya community to come and talk about certain things, you're going to kind of leave and choose the other social circles instead. Moving forward, just 2 more points shortly going ahead. There's the culture of youth organizations as well. Like Mayor Rohin had said, this is actually a very useful point. When we started the KCYL, some part of the goal was also to get people together, kind of like a dating site. You'll get a marriage out of it. That was kind of the plan. I think kids these days communicate very differently and they find their own people, even in the community. When you like someone and you don't like someone, you find them differently. You kind of get to know them outside of these events also necessarily. That's how social media has changed this part of the game. So the idea of KCYL and the youth diaspora organizations itself might have to change. And it's less about, oh, we come here to maybe get married and then sort of leave immediately after that, and more about just being there because of friends and because you enjoy being with the community. And this also goes for people right after they get married. Life is very challenging at that stage because you're not really taking on your responsibilities, but also the responsibilities of other people from that point on. And it can feel alienating if the community is only there for the fun of it, which is a point that we'll come to in the value propositions, which is you need to have people getting together in practical, small ways, which make you feel linked and make you feel valued in the community. And my last point for now will be the events as well. There's the fact that in many cases, in some places, now this depends from unit to unit and locality to locality. In some units, there is always a split between the local culture of the kids who are running the events and the culture of people who come in to youth diaspora events and are running it. So there's always the need to balance out what's part of my identity as someone from Dubai, or part of my identity and my sense of fun as someone from, say, Vienna or France or Australia, and balancing out the Malayali parts of the events as well. So there are cultural sensibilities that I think all of us need to be more sensitive to mediate these things. So these are some of the major challenges that I face. Bullet pointing would be talking about the 6 major points there. So I'm going to go ahead and let Yeshidas deal with the next major points.
Thank you, Nikita. And thank you, Chris, for the wonderful intro, bro. Good day, my dear Knananites. First, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the DKCCA for giving me this opportunity to speak about the similar issues confronted by the youth globally within our Knanaya community. Also, I extend my gratitude to the support each and every one of you has shown here by participating in this discussion to support us despite living in this unprecedented time of COVID-19. As you all know, Janmam kondum karmam kondumana oru Knanayakkaran undavunathu. It is the responsibility of the parents to nurture and pass this on to their children. However, these children who later become young adults are crucial to enable our values to be passed on to the next generation through endogamy. The number of Knanaya youths who do not comply with endogamy unfortunately still occur. This questions the sustainability of our Knanaya diaspora. As outlined by the challenges by Nikita, these make the community appear less engaging to youths. This results in members to drift away from the diaspora to obtain the permission to leave Eparchy of Kottayam, otherwise known as the pluck certificate from the Knanaya community. So to address this, let's ask the youth, I mean the UKKCYL members, about what they want from Knanaya. I think it's time that we move on from what the community wants to what each and every one of us wants. As mentioned by Shauna, the next generation are molded into individualism through education and cultural differences. However, a sense of belonging to our community should be provided to each and every KCYL member in order to preserve the Knanaya diaspora. What we see in the community is the bond that is formed between fellow Knanaya members. The Knanaya spirit that we call can be seen evidently among the youth, requires keen attention as this becomes the stepping stones to bloom friendships. Understanding the needs of the youth and acting on them are vital for this to happen effectively. So personalizing everything to suit the youth are the counter-inquisitive way to make this work. The Knanaya community is well known for having the longest history of traditions that dates back 1,700 years compared to any other Christian denominations in India, and that includes Syro-Malabar. Therefore, it is the responsibility of every parent and youth to continue the values forward for the longevity of Namal Tekumbagar. The enriched Knanaya traditions needs to be inspiring and enlightening to the youth to spark their spirit and pass this amongst themselves. This is why creating friendship bonds are vital between youths. Knowing where you come from and exposing to the youth to our traditions give them the identity to stimulate their sense of belonging within the diaspora. This way, the end goal would be the youths identifying themselves as foreign nationally, Indian ethnically, but most importantly, Knanaya at heart. Creating platforms for children should ignite the beginning of the Knanaya values, and this needs to flourish into inspiration as they become older. This way, nature and nurture should collaborate in order to make a Knanaya youth complete through endogamy. Another recurrent problem is the gray area that is formed within the Knanaya youths post-marriage, that is kalyankainat. Their sense of belonging is at question as they are no longer part of the KCYO organization, but are too young to be part of the adult national community. Their sense of identity becomes dispersed post-marriage due to other priorities. Therefore, it is important that couples keep nurturing the Knanaya spirit that they obtained from the KCYO so that as they never stop developing. Therefore, creating platforms specifically for young married adults are mandatory to keep them deep-rooted within their Knanaya heritage. Raising children amongst other Knanaya children should feel easy and safe for these couples. For this to occur, the bond between couples should be continued from KCYO into their life beyond marriage. So this is the value proposition that we have from a global point of view towards you guys to ignite our discussion today. So now let us move on to the steps that we could pursue to engage the next generation of Knas to uphold our ancestral values and how we can preserve our Knanaya traditions. So I kindly pass over this opportunity to my dearest friend, Vibin Shadak.
Hello, everybody. So as Chris mentioned and others mentioned, my name is Vipin Jadagul. I'm from Chicago, and I'm just thankful that everyone is calling me a Chatai and not an uncle. So I certainly don't consider myself a youth anymore. I'm a little beyond that age, but it is a demographic that I'm very passionate about, having come through KCYO and the experiences of being a youth in the Knanaya community, especially in the US. I feel it's some place that I feel we can contribute, and as a community, we can make a lot of impact. So over the past couple of months, we've had a few meetings with the larger group. It's been really productive, really good discussions. And I would like to share some of the thoughts out of that on just to get us thinking about how to further grow this demographic that we always seem to be concerned about. So, so to start with, so this world that we live in is very much a global world, right? So this is I think if you go to any of the associations across the globe and ask the question, I think everybody will say this is a need, right? How do we attract the next generation? It's a need that everybody has. But it's important to also realize that the solutions may not be one size fit all, right? You're going to have to give it local attention to really make that impact based on your location. But there are certainly things that we can possibly do globally as well, and we'll go into that. So what is our goal, right? I think that's important to establish. And I've heard this 100 times, whether that's the community or church or anywhere. We always say, how do we get the next generation to participate more? That's usually tend to be the prevailing thing that we hear. But I think it's also important that we look at it in a different perspective, right? We should also think of, and this goes to what Shauna was saying about the collective versus individualistic mindset. We should think about how can the community support the next generation, right? I mean, it's very important to be thinking that way. And this is not in any way to say that the community is not doing anything. I mean, I have experience mostly here from Chicago. Chris, can we move on a couple more to that? I have experience, especially in Chicago, and I can say that there is over the past 20, 30, 40 years, there's a system that's built up that works. And it really works for the younger kids. I mean, through our kids club, the youth leagues, and the colosseums and the dance programs. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for our kids to mingle, for them to build those bonds and really feel the value of being in the community. And this even extends even to the KCY level, right? So while that's more culturally focused, there is still a lot that we do there. But others, as others mentioned before, beyond that, there is a gap, right? And it's a gap in both directions. We all, you know, once you get to that age, there's a lot of different priorities that come into play. There's careers, there's families. So it's important to understand that, you know, that there's reasons for that gap, but it goes from the other direction as well. I mean, even as, you know, like last week, I saw some communication come on WhatsApp, and it's geared towards the youth, yet it's in Malayalam. We got to realize that we got to change our ways a little bit to adapt to the world that we live in. And so really, to bring those people back in, to get them attracted, get them involved, we have to have a shift in mindset, right? That's really needed to get the people engaged. And how do we go about doing that? It's important that we accept them as the future, right? It shouldn't just be a campaign agenda. I know we're about to go through an election cycle here in the US, and youth might be one of the most misused words in our community, right next to endogamy. We throw it out, especially during election times. There's no shortage of youth because everybody knows it's important, and I don't believe they're saying that in vain, right? They do mean it when we say it. Our leaders do care about it. They do mean it, but due to the various things that happen in a term, let's say the different. You know, Rome might send out a letter or the bishop might say something, and then we run chasing on that, and then we lose track of what we actually wanted to accomplish. And we need to get past that. We need to really get past that because we need to realize this next generation, this group of people that we're talking about, these are the people that are contributing to the biggest of corporations in the world, the biggest businesses, governments like Rohin J here, right? I mean, there's a lot to be gained from this demographic, from this group of people. They're the ones that are leading countries these days. So it's important that we accept them as the future. Now, once we accept them, we got to support them. You know, it's a quote that I've used in the past. I didn't originate it, it came from someone else, but we got to realize that the community needs this generation a lot more than they need the community. Right? That's a very important thing for us to realize. And we mentioned a lot of value proposition for, as Nikita was mentioning when she showed up in Vienna. There's someone that was there to help her out, which is absolutely true. I mean, there's hundreds of examples of this, and it's great to know that. You know, I met Chris for the first time this morning, but instantly there's something more than just a random meeting, right? I mean, there's a connection that's automatically there. But I think we can do more. I think we do need to do more to really engage this group. So let's not only look at just preserving the samurai, but let's concentrate on providing for that community, right? If you truly show the value to someone, it's more chances that they will contribute and the samudayam will actually be stronger for it, right? So especially at a local level, let's put effort in figuring out what the needs are for that specific community, right? A need in Australia may not be the same as a need in Dubai, or even locally, the need in Chicago may not be the need in California and New York, right? So it's important that we, as leaders, put effort into figuring out what we can do, because if we are able to add to that value proposition, that will automatically get this generation to want to contribute more. It's much more effective for them to come naturally and contribute rather than do something because an uncle called and forced them to do something. We'll get a lot more out of them. Now, after that, let's accommodate them. Right? So let's make it easier for them to contribute. So the reality is this generation most likely are not gonna go through a contested election cycle and do all the necessary that uncles have gradually been adding on to over the past years to win an election. Because the way they look at it is, why do I need to go through all that to contribute my time and energy in serving the community, right? And we can argue both directions on that, but that's when having talked to many people, I feel that's the reality of where we stand. And as mentioned earlier, they are the generation, let's say from ages 20 to 30 or 40, they're in a span of their life where there's a lot going on. They may have just gotten married, they have young kids, they're establishing themselves in the career, etc. So they may not have a lot of time to really contribute and commit to a 2-year term. So even if they're willing to come forward and do it, I mean, they not always have the time to do it. So let's give them opportunities to contribute at a smaller level, right? So they don't need to be the president or the secretary or whatever, right? But they can just take over responsibility for a small activity and execute it. And something as simple as, let's set the example. Let's start our meetings on time. If these guys come to 2 or 3 meetings and they're wasting their time, they're not going to come to the next one. So let's make those little tweaks that we can to keep up with the changing times. And once we accommodate them and support them, let's trust them, right? Let's give them some responsibilities or have them take responsibilities, step back, and then trust them. They can handle it. They do a lot more, I'm sure. So let's not get in the way. Let's just make sure that they can fully contribute without micromanaging. Looks like we're having a little difficulty with the presentation, but I'll continue to move on. So we talked a little bit about what are some specific things that we can possibly do on the global scale. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it is a global problem, but it does need local attention. So this needs to be refined more to fit your specific needs. But we looked at what are some of the things that we can possibly do at a global level and at a local level. Right? This is just to get the conversation started, not necessarily this is the blueprint to solve this challenge. But the fact that we're all here together this morning is a testament to the global world that we live in, the technology of our time. So let's leverage technology to do more, right? So, and this is not a new thought. We've done this many times. We've created different little networking things or matrimonial things and such. But I think rather than inventing something new, which we may not have the means to do, let's just leverage what's already out there. Let's use the Facebook groups, let's use the WhatsApp groups or Instagram or whatever works for your local associations or even at DKCC at a global level. Let's use that. Let's have more of these type of sessions where we can share our thoughts and further move forward. One example of that I wanted to bring up is what's on the screen here, the Knanaya Professional Network. This was started by Shinsei, I want to say maybe like 6 months ago. maybe less. And last I checked yesterday, there was over 350 members on it. So the idea behind this is not any particular agenda, rather just a way for us to network, especially on a professional level. You know, when you have a job opening at your company, let's put that in there. One example I've used in the past is when I was in college, I got an internship at a company, and I got that internship after I want to say like 3 rounds of interviews. Finally, I got it. I show up to the interview the first day, and there's 2 more guys that got the internship. They're much younger than me, and I'm talking to them at lunch, and I'm like, "How was your interview process?" I'm like, "What interview?" "Oh, we saw the boss at the, he goes to our church, and he just said show up, and we did, and those guys are in, right?" So, such things, it helps a lot for a young person. Right? If you're able to use our wide network that we have and help out a young person at that age to establish their careers, it leaves a lasting memory, but also it clearly helps them. So let's use things like LinkedIn to further extend how much we can help our own people. Another example is, maybe it's possible that there are online facilities now, even LinkedIn has it, I believe, where you can sign up for coursework. Maybe let's figure out a discounted plan or some kind of plan where we can offer classes through these established networks. Things like there may be some accredited courses that we can do for our kids, or things like resume building or interviewing skills or parenting skills, mental health. I mean, there's so much that are relevant that we can do to further develop our community. And let's leverage those platforms and not reinvent things, and see if we can further improve and add to that value proposition that we talked about earlier. Another thing that we talked about is a global virtual networking opportunity. So as mentioned, we've had a few of these sessions over the past months. And for me, at least, it's been really enlightening in meeting, Nikita and Yeshdas and Chris and others. It's really interesting to hear the perspectives that they have. What are the different challenges that they went through? In fact, I think the very first meeting that we had, there was some things that we talked about that are things that have already been solved in the US. Now, it may not be the right way that we solved it, but it's good to hear what we did and to see what worked or didn't work, and see if we can further improve upon that. So maybe organizing some leadership sessions for our incoming KCYL boards across the globe, or even at the KCS level, I think it would be good to have some strategic sessions where we can share our ideas and, again, grow as a community. So that's another thing that we can look at the global level. Now, next slide. So moving on to the local perspective on things. This is, again, is something where we have to put, it's going to be very different from local associations or local communities or countries for that matter. So it's important that we put more thought into it, but maybe, it's possible to do some volunteering activities. And of course, that has an effect where you're giving back, but also this can be something that helps kids in their resumes or college applications, or even getting some credits in some cases. So let's not just look at it as volunteer, but let's think a little further and see how we can add to that value proposition by doing it. Now, as mentioned earlier, I mean, there's a lot of talented people in our community, right? And what was it? I think maybe a month or 2 ago, there was a video, I forget if it was from Dallas or Houston, some of the youth there that put together a video where it showcased how they provided back to the community, providing coats and jackets and such to the homeless community there. But if you look at, I mean, obviously it's a great thing that they did, but if you also look at the editing capabilities of whoever did that video, it's professional work, right? And when we have a need, when we want to publicize something, let's tap into those such resources where we're giving them a platform to showcase their talents, as well as its advantages to the community. So when we have needs, whether it's legal needs or architectural needs for our buildings, or making a t-shirt or a flyer, let's try to engage our people to make them feel more part of the process. It's not an easy thing to accomplish, I agree, but I think it's worth trying more and again, adding to that value proposition. And last but not least, I mean, it's important to do actions or come up with tasks that truly impact people's lives, right? And doing this, and this is not just a youth agenda anymore, this is in general, as a community, as our associations, if we can do things that impact people's lives directly, a lot more will come back from it. People will be a lot more engaged when you do such things. And you know, that whether that's for the seniors or the young kids, it doesn't matter. If you can show people that the community is here to care for them, that will be reciprocated. So some of the examples that we talked about was maybe, you know, younger kids in college or such, maybe they can provide tutoring to the younger generation. I mean, for a young family, having such avenues within the community, having that infrastructure already really helps them. Or we can even look into maybe, you know, providing childcare services. And that doesn't mean you have to open up a daycare, but maybe linking, you know, the people that want to provide childcare to the people that need childcare. That could be something that certainly our community do. And that for a young person's life has a huge impact. Having gone through that stage myself, I know it's something that would be very helpful if we can do such things. So let's really look at how we can impact people's lives and implement those. And maybe let's reduce a little bit on our normal track of just samudayam, endagami, and let's look at how do we engage the community more, how do we give back to the community more, because that I think will have a stronger effect on keeping the samudayam alive in the long run. So let's not have a short-sighted view, rather let's have a long-sighted view. And to summarize things, I think we've talked about this already, but just to touch on it. So it is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It really requires thought and effort. And unless you really put that thought and effort into it, we're not going to see the output that we need. Next, it's important that we walk the talk. We talked about how we talk about youth always, and sometimes that gets diminished as the time goes on. But let's make sure that we keep it a priority and we truly serve the community as leaders. Next, and when we come up with initiatives, oftentimes we have a short-sighted view. So usually the terms that we have are 2-year terms, and we implement things thinking only about those 2 years. But it needs to be more, because these are things that needs to go across multiple terms to have continuity and have real effect. So let's think long-term, and let's get that buy-in from the leaders, the community, et cetera, so that they do keep going and keep giving back to the community. And last but not least, I mean, this is a quote that I love to use all the time because I firmly believe it. And I believe it was Selvin Elackatt that said it in a youth convention many years ago. But it's really important for the community to realize that the community needs the next generation Knanayites a lot more than they need the community, right? It's a very strong and it's a meaningful statement, because that's really the truth. And it's important that we realize that and accommodate for that. So thank you very much for the time. And Chris, I guess, shall we move on to the next portion?
Absolutely. Thank you so much to all the presenters for presenting today. It was extremely informative. Now we've been allocated approximately half an hour to engage in discussions. So feel free to either comment on the chat box, or if you'd like to verbalize, please speak into your microphone. As I said earlier, there's no issues. You can speak in either English or Malayalam, but before you speak, please introduce yourself with your name and where you're from. Is there any questions that we can begin with?
Chris, before we just move ahead, I just want to inform all the audience here, because we were trying to increase the limit of this Zoom since 2 days. Me and Jyotis were trying our best to do it, but because of some technical difficulties, we could not increase it. We could keep it only 100 participants. And we are getting a lot of calls from different parts of the world asking to, they cannot join because we have already 100 people. So what we will do is that we have already recorded the sessions, and what we will do, we will upload it as soon as possible. We will upload it as soon as possible in our Facebook page, so that, other youths, those who missed the opportunity to participate, can view the entire session. Okay. Thank you. Just back to Chris. Chris, go ahead.
Absolutely. So thanks for that message. So now, any questions? Anybody would like to start?
Chris, I don't have any questions. I just want to say it would be rude of me to leave without saying bye. So I do have another meeting that I have to go to. So I just want to, I try to listen to all the initiatives that you guys all brought up. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I hope you guys have a healthy discussion. And once again, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Mayor Elackatt. Appreciate it.
I think we can, Chris, what we can see that there are people, those who are, raising their hands. They can, we can unmute them and ask them, they can ask the questions.
Okay, absolutely. I can, yep.
Brother James, yeah. Yeah, you can unmute.
Yep.
Hi, nice meeting you. I listened to all these, all those who were talking on this. Are you able to hear me?
Yep. Yes, we can, brother.
We can.
I am Brother James, speaking from Tanzania. I'm a missionary here. Of course, hometown is Nilur, Kaduturuthi. I've been a missionary, Montfort Brothers of St. Gabriel, working in Andhra Pradesh for several years. Last 15 years, I'm here in Tanzania. I was very eager to listen to, especially the youngsters, regarding these endogamous practices. Well, I have two things in mind. One is to appreciate what one of the speakers said: the community needs than the individual. That, I think, is the primary thing, because today when you talk to the youngsters about this Knanaya Samudayam and so on, they don't seem to be more convinced about it. But so therefore, what the last speaker said, it's a need for this community. So therefore, we have to design practices and values that we will be able to retain the youngsters. The second question what I would raise is, today's youngsters are exposed to a lot of personal freedom. Therefore, to keep them, it's a kind of an exclusive community buildup. So it needs a really challenge to keep these today's youngsters who are exposed to so many things and diverse thinking and philosophies, to keep them coherently. It is a difficult task, especially the youngsters of the future. Just wanted to communicate that.
Thank you very much for your input. We do appreciate your input. It's amazing. I had a question from Neil Edat. Would you like to speak up?
Hi guys, thank you so much, Chris. Just want to, on behalf of all the youth members that were on the planning behind this call, thank DKCC and Jyoti Sangal and everyone, Sheen Sangal and everyone that was behind organizing this. I think it's an absolutely amazing effort to be able to see so many talented and passionate leaders from all across the country. As one of the things you guys mentioned, creating that connection with your community. For me as a leader in the community, it was truly an amazing experience to see that there are other kids like me in my age group around the world willing to step forward and make positive contribution to the community. As I think Vipin Chadha mentioned, sometimes growing up, you wonder at this age why so many people turn away. And the vast number of how many people turn away sometimes does give you this pessimistic view that maybe things won't last when you're older, that maybe this is crumbling and that what you're fighting for maybe might not last. But it was very refreshing to hear what Robin Chadha had to say and what other people had to say, that this will not go away, that this is something that is here to last, and that it's up to us, it's up to kids in our generation to make sure that as it grows along with us instead of away from us. And I think that is the purpose of this meeting. I think that should be the the biggest initiative of this meeting. And I think the question I had is that, like I was talking about, these conversations being so fruitful for leaders like me and Chris and Nikita and Shauna and Yeshudas, what will DKCC or other organizations be doing to continue these types of talks so that we can have these fruitful conversations more than just once? You know, what is the platform that we can create? And I think we had some good conversation about it during our conversations prior to this, but I would love for you guys to talk about, you know, maybe the, I think we talked about some Facebook groups, some Instagram groups, like what is the plan for that continued conversation?
Thank you very much for your question. Is there a representative from DKCC who'd like to answer that question?
Joe, this.
So maybe I can take this.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, Neil, you know, the one thing that you have to recognize is that when it comes to technology and connecting, your generation is a lot more literate than ours, right? And that's a fact. That doesn't mean everybody in our generation is illiterate about social media or technology. But one of the things that you can help us is to come up with ideas. And what we could do is actually to say there are a lot of people who have the means to and resources to support us in creating that. So I think it has to be a joint effort. That joint effort has to inform us what works, because we can't go and independently create something and then nobody uses it, right? So I think you need to come up with ideas. I think that's where the forum that we have created here, you have now connections around the globe. And my hope is that you will step forward and help us to help you.
Of course, always happy to, and I hope that things like this continue. It's great to see. Thank you, Sheen's uncle.
Thank you, Sheen's uncle. I actually had a question for you, Sheen's uncle. Now, it's only been a couple of sessions, and we've been able to meet a lot of people from different countries who are also within the community. Is DKCC in a position to ever host a global convention where we can all meet up together? In a post-COVID, of course.
I think Joseph should answer that. I can't comment on that.
Yeah, actually, we were planning to do that was in the global convention in the last year in Dubai, but unfortunately it doesn't happen. And again,
I think you've cut off a little bit there.
We are planning to do to DKCC. Hello, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
You can hear me. Yeah, I said that we were planning to global convention with the complete community in Dubai last year, but doesn't happen because of the COVID. And now we are planning to do a DKCC Youth League. So with all other countries, so then we can do the proper youth summit or something in Europe or America or somewhere. That is the main plan. We are planning to do that. So that way youth can communicate each other and do the convention or summit or anything like that.
And also one suggestion again from my end is, Chris, when you guys actually now, since you all have some connection, you have a group now, at least you're talking, I think, we can't jump into a big convention on day one, right? So we have to take baby steps, but we need to take those baby steps faster. And I think, once you guys actually form at least a connection, a network, a couple of people take the leadership to organize among yourself and slowly bring in the leaders and leaders of the leaders, especially from your generation, from KCYL and stuff like that. And when you have that, always work with the adult organization to get support, because maybe if you organize an event in Dubai, maybe somebody who is currently in college and leading KCYL in a particular location may not be able to afford to attend it. Let the community come together and support them. And that type of an approach is necessary for the organizations to create value in the youth and also to connect the youth. I think that's the commitment. My hope is that the leaders in this group who are listening in will deliberately make that, bring the community together behind our youth and create opportunities for them to meet and to establish the leadership and gatherings, etc., around the globe.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Is there any other questions that anybody else would like to put forth? Feel free to either speak up or just type on the chat box.
Shiju Kanajan from Houston. I have a question regarding to we youth peoples. You can organize these global meets like and just introduce that the leaders, they can follow your ideas and stuff. And also we Knanayites means not in cotton dices. We also have a youth in Knanaya Youth and also the other communities also. So we need to together, they have only these parts and we have other parts too. We need to communicate each other. Then they can develop the their ideas, and we can also choose. Otherwise, we will be lose our identity, the endogamy and other things too. But we will be go to the Knanaya Yacobites and married together, and their generation also come to the Catholic faith. Also, we can change. The community is not going away from us. Community itself inside. So that type of thought also you need to do this type of conversations. Any ideas you can talk?
So I can touch on that. So as I mentioned earlier, I mean, at the global level, things are difficult, right? I met all these guys because Joseph and Shinset, I put something together, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't know a lot of these guys, and that's probably the same for them as well. But there is, on a local level, for example, in Houston, there's probably tasks or activities that you can do that can make a much quicker impact, and which would lead to further things that you can do globally. So I think the immediate feedback that we can get, immediate impact that we can make is at the local level. And we should start there because that's something that we can all impact.
Absolutely agreed. There's a question from Joshi Thirku Matakil from Abu Dhabi.
Hi, good evening. My name is Joshi Thirku Matakil and I'm from Abu Dhabi. I was listening to the speakers. And first of all, let me congratulate DKCC for doing these kind of platforms to share their ideas. Now, Mr. Yeshudas, he was mentioned that the post-marriage period, where where these youths, they don't have an idea whether yet they want to continue in KCYL or they want to go for the adult forum. I understand he has mentioned this. Based on that point, I was just thinking, see, when we talk about the sense of endogamy, that should be started from the young age. I understand it is there back in India, it is there. But people or pupils who are in America or UAE or wherever, they don't have this platform. They have, a mixed pupil, so that the sense of endogamy may be less compared to the students who are growing up back in India. So my suggestion was to start the sense of endogamy from a younger age, and which starts from the family itself. Secondly, see, you people, the youths, are the next generation. You have to take care about your children, your family. If you people are sensibly, sensible about the endogamy, then you are able to educate your children. See, I understand youths, they think they want to go for not for a lengthy mass. They prefer for Latin Rite Mass, or they want to spend time with your friends. See, I understand when we spend time with our kids at a younger age, this endogamy will be automatically transferred to their brain. So I think, previously DKCC have conducted many classes, but I understand day by day the participation got wrong. I think Joseph can explain that well. The initiative should be from the young generation. I mean, the youths. When there is a platform, you people should be really ready to utilize that platforms. That is my suggestion. Thank you.
Yes, Uncle, that's very true, actually, because from the point that I raised about Knanaya couples post-marriage, so the newly wedded couples, was that they become dispersed from the Knanaya community because of other priorities, Uncle. For example, like career, childcare, all of that. And I feel like us, from my point of view, when I'm looking up at my sisters, I want to marry within Knanaya. I want to participate in endogamy, but I feel like the amount of people who needs to be inspired, because they need to look at these couples as, oh, I want to be like them. And if there is no kind of platform or anything where they can participate in, I think it would kind of be less in like youths like me sort of thing. So that's what that's the point that we have from the UK point of view. So that's why I was putting that across. But I totally understand, Uncle. That's the nature and nurture part. That's where we are brought up with it, and that's how we kind of pass it on and participate in endogamy. That's a very good point, Uncle. Thank you.
Yeah. So Joshi, I just want actually just to follow up that one of the problems that Yeshdas highlighted is real. It's actually very real even in the US as well. What happens is when you are married, you are no longer comfortable in a singles environment, right? So a singles environment is very different from a married environment. And so if you get married at 29, 30, or 27, 28, whatever the age group is, and then you continue to, because your culture hasn't changed, and you are an American or a Brit or an Australian, and you still don't have that comfort level or that cultural integration sufficiently enough to participate freely in the adult organizations' activities. So that's where there is that gap that actually occurs. So one of the suggestions I think came from even UK participants, and we all agree that, when young people get married within the community, let's celebrate them. Let's celebrate those marriages. Bring them, at least once a year, all the couples who married into our community, and recognize them for the decisions that they have made to stay within the community. So that's what they were actually talking about, right? It was really, we need to do a better job considering the fact that that is the bedrock and the cornerstone of sustaining this community. So that's what they're talking about.
Thank you very much.
I understood. Just to conclude it, learn the swimming at a younger age. See, you learn swimming, let's say you're 40, 50, you're in water, you don't drown, right? So we get the idea of endogamy at a very younger age from the family when you're young, so that, it will sustain. That was my point. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Yep. Sorry.
Tina also has a question, so I'm not going to keep this very long. No issues. So just to add to something Joshi Uncle was saying, I completely understand the point of when you're young, kind of getting your ideas, your bedrock, your foundation right means that you'll keep your ideas for a long time. But also we're in a generation where I think when you're 14, you're 15, you're getting a little older, people will start asking you questions and you have to start asking yourself questions. So it's one thing that the parents can do till, am I getting stuck? I hope not. It's one thing that the parents can do till a certain age where you're just like, okay, this is how we live our lives. We do endogamy for these reasons. Kids are going to question it again when they're 14 or 15. Everyone kind of goes through their phases to question things in their life and the things that they're brought up with, which is why I said that we really, really need to emphasize holding these conversations again and again as kids get older, because their questions about why we should do endogamy will get more complex. People often, and I've had this happen over and over again. This happened in KCYL when I was in Bangalore as well. People will stand up and ask, well, it's not good for our gene pool. Why should we continue this? And we need people who are professionals in that area and not just theologians, not just achanmar from churches, people who work in fields like biology, people who work in fields like medicine, to kind of come forward and not maybe agendize the program, but to say, okay, this is the reasonable risk or the limits of risks that we're working within for biology or for these sorts of areas when we go ahead with a community like this. So I think that that kind of professional turn on how we deal with the community is also useful. It's not just inculcating things as children. That goes a long way, but people have free will. They will inevitably ask themselves questions as they get older. And I think we also need to learn to move up our conversations to speak to 14-year-olds as they are at 14, to speak to 18-year-olds as they are at 18, to speak to someone who's 25 and about to get married, to speak to someone who's 28 and married. Because the questions will keep changing. And I think the way we level up our answers to keep things like endogamy going also needs to change. And I think that's something you can't leave the responsibility of that just to the older generation or to the younger generation. It needs to be a combined effort. So that's just something I wanted to add, because I don't think it stops at childhood.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Guys, we are very short on time, so I'm going to ask everyone to have direct questions. We're trying to really get as many questions as we can. There's a lot of people putting their hands up as well. So we're going to move on to Tina.
Hi, my name is Tina. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. And my question is, I'll keep it very short. My question is that how can we use this platform and tell and use this for our younger youth and let them know that there's more careers other than engineering and nursing or doctor? Like, because growing up, I've always only heard about engineers and nurses and doctors. So hearing about Robin Jardai, you know, like it's possible for us as Knanayas to reach that public office. So how can we use this platform to know about other kinds of careers?
Absolutely love that question. I myself tend to sit there and wonder the same thing. Is there a member or representative from DKCC who would like to contribute to that?
Actually, yeah, again, I will try to respond to that. So DKCC has actually taken an initiative in summer, I think right after maybe July, August timeframe. They have shared that presentation as well. And that was specifically focused on various career paths people can take. And that was a session to encourage parents to encourage their kids not to just focus on doctors and engineers. And I think, you know, these are the kinds of things we need to sustain it. Again, as Vipin said, having the program once may not be sufficient. And they did DKCC can only organize it globally. But then subsequently, the local organizations, the regional, that's KCCNA, KCCO, et cetera, plus the local organizations should take that further and continue to educate parents. I think here, what you said, Tina, is more of an education of parents rather than an education of your generation, because your generation wants to be follow your heart, wants to follow your dreams. But it is parents like my generation who needs to understand and accept that the doctors and engineers are not the only two people in the world, two professions in the world.
Just to add on to that, she said, I want to say this was during your term when you were KZN president. Towards the beginning of it, you guys used to like showcase like a young person from the community that was doing something good, right? Some achievement that they made. So doing something like that periodically just gives people exposure to different things that people are doing, right? I think if we can do that at the local levels or even the global levels, I think that could be useful. And that's showcasing a young person that has accomplished something. So might be an idea.
Could I tag in as well? I think when people just end up speaking in community, younger children often actually automatically start asking questions. For example, many of my close friends who grew up in my generation, so to speak, in Dubai, did move into STEM. So not a lot of people had questions in that direction. I was one of the few people who moved in the humanities direction directly. So a lot of young students I noticed would often directly message me. Sometimes they'd be like, oh, why did you move into journalism? How did you talk to your parents about it? So these kinds of questions do come up. Okay, I've been glad in that my parents were quite liberal about it and then they let me move into those fields as well. But also having people move into community leadership, and this is why community leadership from the youth is important. When you step forward, people also start asking questions about your personal and professional life. And it can open up new avenues completely for kids who are younger. And this isn't to say that all of us need to radically change our fields and become libertarians tomorrow morning. If you took medicine in this generation, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's still really cool. But it's also just about like bringing the variety in. And I don't think it always needs to be like individuals being showcased by older people, because there's always like a tendency at a certain age to not take that seriously because they're like, well, that's because uncle knows them. It's also about just you speaking to them as people. So I think we as youth also need to make the effort to kind of just reach out to young kids sometimes. Be approachable.
Agreed. So guys, we've got probably time for 2 more questions. There is a question from Saji Joseph. Would you like to unmute, please, and continue?
Yeah, good evening. Should take this opportunity to thank everyone for coming to this meeting. Around 100 people are participating on this one, and appreciate DKCC for conducting this program. I may be talking in the background of a Middle East background, because there are 2 types of youths we can find here. One is those who are studied in Kerala, complete their colleges, and coming to for work in the Middle East. And there are children studying here, +1, +2, then going to the degree level, or they go abroad for the education. Whenever we are coming to as a youth forum in here, especially in the Middle East, there is a gap between those who came to work here in the Middle East and those who studied here, even though they are also coming from the same education background and all. But there's a different gap between the communication and the psychology. I don't know. There's a big gap is there. There should be a way to find out this gap should be minimized, and there should be aligned with yourself mentally. You should be aligned wherever the youth studied coming from Kerala and coming for a work, or if you are studied and born up here. That's the first thing I will pray. Whenever the forum coming for a KCVL meeting or anything, there should be people in the Middle East background. If I would say that there will be initiative from the people who came to work, that will be the youth, and people who studied here are reluctant to join with them. That should be stopped first, and should come together as a youth, as a Knanaya youth. We should be come together as a single KCVL unit. And my suggestions to youth, when you are coming to a meeting for a Knanaya meeting, Kudambiyogam or mission or whatever is thing, you don't just sit in that corner and discuss within your own team. If there is a discussion happening, you make your voice, turn up your take the mic and open your mouth. When somebody found that you are courage enough to talk, there will be responsibility coming to you. Don't worry about. Don't feel that it's always talking with the meeting is going on with the adults and the families and going on. You are sitting and enjoying here on the mobile and all. No, you should take the initiative. Instead of then contribute what community contributing to you, you should take what I am contributing to the community or the meeting or whatever the diaspora. So we should be more engaged in the community meetings and so in the discussion, so that you will get automatically you will get more chance to engage, and you will be taking up the more responsibility. And lastly, we have make on social media. We have got a Facebook account. Many accounts are there. So instead of making many unknown friends, make a creative group of our own youth people, our own Knanaya people, so that you can have a more relation, you can have more communication in future. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your suggestion. I guess that harps on to what Vipin Chadha talked about. There's a lot of actionable things that we can do in order to make sure we're a lot more tighter. So yeah, we'll continue with that. And the next question is from Smitha, I believe.
Hi, I'm Smitha. Smitha Tota from New York. I have a quick question. All of you, thank you for speaking up about your generation's concepts about the community. You all talked about KCYL as a community organization. Now, KCYL was established as a religious organization in Kerala. So now DKCC talked about establishing a global KCYL or a global youth forum, maybe. What are your thoughts about this youth forum being a religious organization versus being a community organization? Anybody can answer.
So this is Vipin. So this is I think sometimes where we get deviated and get different opinions and views and such. But my personal feeling is KCYL, as it was established, and we're a small community. We're not that big, right? I don't know that we need to have separate spiritual versus cultural activities or organizations. I think it makes sense to have it all together and try to cater to the different needs using different activities and such. And specifically about even forming a separate global KCYL, my feeling would be efforts would be better spent if you are to enable the various local associations by maybe bringing those guys together rather than creating another separate organization of its own. Not sure if that answered all your questions, but my personal feeling is that I feel like it can accomplish both spiritual and cultural needs.
Okay, so we're going to go into...
Anyone else has any thoughts on that?
I can make a comment.
Okay,
yeah, go ahead, Nikita. It's important. It's your meeting.
I'll keep it quick and short. So, Smita Chechi, one of the things I think we did discuss over the course of all of this was that even if we have KCYL or like a DKCYL, I don't think the generation itself, I think, is not very intent on like the church nexus of it. I think culturally we're moving towards a more community-based kind of organization, and that was what these discussions were about in large parts, kind of moving the sort of cultural understanding of why we do KCYL towards a more community-based organization, something that you kind of come to because you know the people, and it's less about the church side of it. I understand the church aspect of it is always going to be there. It's a faith-based community as well. But I think that's where the cultural movement is towards, in my opinion, based on what I know from people at large. I don't know anyone in my generation who runs these organizations and is aggressive about church. Again, they're all people who go to church, they do mass, all this is fine. But I think the Knanaya community is less about the church part of it. It's about hanging out with friends. It's about growing up with friends. I mean, I don't hang out with my friends like I do when I was 15 now. Things have changed, but it's still, we do come back together as Knanaya people and hang out a lot. But again, so it's more of that community connect that we have now. I'd say it's largely moving in that direction rather than the church politics direction.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, so
can I just say something? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm Jason. I'm actually a seminarian studying in UK currently. Just to make what I feel personally, just my opinion to share. Recently, sort of, I was like, as part of my studies for seminary, I was studying, the history of the Church, Sierra Malabar Church, but also it obviously it involves our history as Knanaya, so studying that and also like participating in a Zoom gathering conducted by the Knanaya. I came to realize that, we, as a tradition, not just our tradition as Knanaya, comes that we came to India as missionaries, in AD 345. So I think something which was very new for me, which I didn't hear, it wasn't like something that I heard again and again. I heard it probably here and there, but I think sometimes when we say that, we as a community is just about cultural and not so much about spiritual, I think I can understand, we not mixing it all up and, being sort of keeping this balance. But at the same time, I think we actually lose our certain identity of ourselves when we totally separate ourselves from the church, because Knanaya community in its essence is something that has its essence from the church, from staying with the church. That has been the history of the Knanaya community. I just felt like sharing that because I don't know if that answers the question, because I didn't hear the question very clearly. So, but yeah, thank you.
I just want to follow up with one comment as well. I think one of the, this is a very controversial subject. Even within our the youth teams, when they actually discussed, they did identify this as sometimes as a deterrent for youth to actively participate in the events, because if we look at our social media and WhatsApp discussions, it's all around this church business, community business. I'm equally guilty. I must admit that I'm actually also participated in those things. But the more we listen to the generation behind us, for them, as Shauna said at the outset, it's very late for her. I hope she's still up and listening to this. Their generation, it's an individualistic generation. It is not a collective generation like what we do. And the values they live by are very different than the values that we live by. And we cannot force some of these values onto them because that is going to be counterproductive. That's the mistake that we keep making. They speak different languages, even the same language they speak in different accent, they don't understand. And language is the basis of culture, right? So if you think about in those lines, what we are trying to force upon them is not something that they actually even can accept. That it is almost like each one of us actually, if are forced into a mass or a service in French, and then ask us to embrace that every day and go there and see this. And that's the type of feelings that they have in the church stuff, right? So in their view, church is a personal choice, and they will make that personal choice, and they practice their faith and the Catholic faith because they're all Catholics, they're proud about it. And let's actually force these things on them. At the same time, the community has to survive because Catholic Church will survive without Knanaya community, right? So Catholic Church and people will actually practice Catholicism without Knanaya community. But when it comes to fundamentally preserving the community, we should have a relentless focus on what it takes to do it. AD 345 is not going to cut it anymore, right? That's where Vipin's, that last slide, it's the value that we can create as a community in the lives of these young people. If we cannot focus these guys, we will lose them. And that's where the focus should be. We cannot be talking about last 1700 years every day, every morning and every afternoon, and every sentence that we speak about endogamy. That's not going to cut it. We have to accept that. That's a sad reality. But the outcome, the positive side of things is if we create value as adults in the lives of these young people, they are here to carry this torch for several generations after us. So that's why the long-term focus is critical. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Uncle. Look, change is the only permanent thing in this world. If we don't change and adapt to today's time, I don't know how strong we can be as a community. So thank you very much for that input. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think we're going to have to conclude with Jennifer Jose's final input. Jennifer, could you please unmute?
Hi, Chris. My name is Jennifer. I'm from Australia. I just wanted to bring up something that I saw in the chat. I think it's more for Vipin. It's from Chris. I think it was, Chris Katapura. He said it's about American born versus Malayali born. So in other countries, the KCYL unifies everyone and accommodates everyone in one umbrella. But apparently in the US, there is a complete gap between KCYL and Yuva Janavedi. I feel these two separate youth organizations will clash in the future in the States when it comes time for the next generation to take adult leadership. So I think Vipin probably would have an idea about it because, yeah.
It's a topic I'm very familiar with. Yes, there are two separate organizations, definitely here in Chicago and other parts of the US, for American-born kids versus Indian-born or kids that came from India, let's say. It started off because there are certainly different needs for the age groups, socially speaking, and that's where it started. Whether we agree or not, some way or form, it became two separate associations. I personally feel it's better to have a single association and try to incorporate the needs of both, all the participants in KCYL, within KCYL. And that's because, you got to realize that is the future, right? Even for the kids that are in Yuva, their kids are going to be American born. So I think we should, rather than looking at it as a negative, I think we should use it as a positive and have KCYL be that conduit that helps people transition from when they come to the US. So there's reasons for why there's two associations, and you know, some people may agree or not agree, but I think the future, I feel it should be that it's a single organization. And my advice to the rest of the world would be to while it's a hard thing to achieve, I think it's important that we work towards keeping that as a single KCYL. That would be my feelings on that for the world.
Thank you very much, guys. I think we've had a very productive and a fantastic session today. I'm going to call forth a member from DKCC to conclude this session.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. Dear leaders, I'm sure that we had spent almost like a 1.5 hour here. No, it's almost like 1 hour 45 minutes we have been spending. And the basic idea of this panel discussion was to discuss the challenges are facing by the Knanaya youths in different parts of the world, the diaspora. And we have seen that there are a lot of contributions, there are a lot of discussions that came from the youth, what they are expecting from adults, from the youth, from the leaders of the community from different parts of the world. How they have been, you know, how they feel that they have been inferior or they have been, you know, sidelined. That's what they, you know, the youths in different parts of the world think. We have been discussing this for this, or like maybe almost like 1.5 months. We have been discussing, and I was there in, you know, like we had a meeting, so like every week we had it like almost one hour to 2 hours, actively participating from different parts of the world, different youths from the different parts of the world. There we come to this conclusion of this today's presentation. I would like to, first of all, thank all the members, especially those who have been participated on the discussion panel, not the discussion, on the discussion which we had it before, for their contribution. From there, we have streamlined a few people to represent them to present it today. When I would like to take this opportunity to thank each one from beginning, our inaugural address by Honorable Mayor Rohin Elackatt, who, you know, though I'm sure that, you know, these guys are very busy, but he took and he agreed to come and address us all the time with us. And he also gave a very important message that, you know, the importance of keeping the practice of the endogamy and continuing the faith as we do. And as as adults, it's must that we need to see the importance of maintaining the endogamy and practicing it in a larger level. Thank you, Mayor. Though he is not here available right now with us, I would like to take this opportunity to thank on behalf of the DKCC for addressing, for doing the inaugural speech. And again, I would like to thank our chairman, Jyotis Kudilil. The Jyotis Kudilil, in the beginning, he came to me, you know, when we discussed this idea, we thought that, you know, how it's going to be worked together, how we can bring the youths. In the beginning, there were a lot of youth when we discussed, they were, you know, quite reluctant to address. They said, no, what's the use of we addressing to the adults, and what is the impact that it's going to make it? Once they were convinced, they all came in a, you know, they all came, and the result is that the amazing result we could see that in this session. And in order to do that, we actually put Dr. Shin Sagashala, to moderate, to begin the discussion, because though he is very well experienced working with the kids across the globe. And we felt that his participation, his guidance will be a great impact. And he, in fact, led the meetings, all the past meetings, though he was behind the screen. He put a lot of efforts on, on organizing this event. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Shin Sagashala for your time, dedication that you have committed towards, conducting such a great event. And then I would like to thank each and every presenter, especially Chris. I'm sure Chris and Shauna, they're, from Australia. They're, I think it's maybe something like a morning 3 a.m. there. And, they have been participating all this time, this kind of environment. And I would like to thank Chris for successfully conducting and being a panel moderator for this event. Thank you, Chris. Hats off to you. And again, Shauna Tomi Nirapel, she has, in fact, she has introduced the next generation of Knanayites and the age proportion. I would like to thank Shauna also for this. I don't know if she's still here, but yep, I think, yeah, thank you so much, Shauna, for, for being with us for such a long time, such a long time in the mid of the night.
That's right.
We would like to thank, especially from the DKCC, especially to you guys, both of you, Chris and Shauna, for being part of it. Then again, Nikita Vincent Valiavitil from UAE. She has, in fact, addressed the challenges and retaining diaspora youth, the importance of keeping the harmony and between the leaders as well as between the youths. Thank you, Nikita, for bringing up very good points and very good discussion on this point, and also actively participating in the group discussion. On behalf of DKCC, I would like to thank you again also. Then Yeshudas Joseph Ramamaliga. I'm sure that you guys are, like a clapping, and I would really, ask you guys to, at least give a virtual clap to all these guys. Again, Yeshudas Joseph from Ragamaliga. He has briefly discussed the value proposition of the youth, the community, through the eyes of next generation, the bond, the understanding, the needs of the youth, what they are expecting from the older generations. It very well explains, the needs, what this is like a platform that we created for them to address publicly what they are expecting from the adults. The importance of keeping the harmony, how the organization and leaders need to keep a harmony so that they believe in the organization. Thank you so much, Yeshudas, for giving a wonderful presentation.
No problem.
And again, Vibin Chalingal has also explained how we can engage the next generation. What is their goals, the next generation goals, the mindset or the mind shift that we adults need to maintain it or to have it to, to accommodate the youth and the, youth as well as the challenges when we are accommodating the youth to the older generation. What are the challenges we will be facing and how these challenges can be addressed smoothly. Very well presented, Vibin, and thank you so much for doing that one. Also, I would like to thank our Joint Secretary, Simon Chamakala, for, being with us in the beginning and welcoming all the audience. And again, you guys are the pillars, the participants, because without you, what are the efforts, what we have done it, what are the presentations, all the presentations, what the youths have done will not make any meaning if you guys are not actively participating. And I would like to thank each one of you for being with us, spending a lot of time and keenly listening to the youth their problems. And I'm sure that in future, we will have a couple of sessions if we could, and we may come to a better understanding between the youths and the adults, so that the DKCC platform will create something in future too. To conclude, I would like to say that the community needs the next generation, the youths. At the same time, youth also need to think that it's the youth also needs, because after the youth, you guys will be coming to an adolescent age, parent. When you become a parent, you feel that, yes, the community also needs you. At the same time, you also need the community to maintain the level, to keep up the generation and keep up the community growing. With this, we would like to conclude today's session, and the chat or the Zoom will be open. So if anybody would like to continue